Good afternoon, guys. It's working, bringing you a quick update on Steem. Hope you guys are having a wonderful afternoon. We're looking at Steem to Bitcoin pairing 4-hour chart on Bittrex, guys. And last time we spoke, let me go ahead and zoom in here a little bit. Last time we spoke, price was operating within this rising wedge. I told you guys to more than likely, anytime you see a rising wedge, usually that typically isn't indicative of price breaking down. I said to make sure you be careful of the bull trap, though, and that's exactly what ended up happening. Price ended up breaking to the upside, coming into these prior order blocks right up in here, wicking into it, and then immediately getting rejected right back down. And as I told you guys, if price did end up breaking down, it was more than likely going to come back down into this 15.6K to 15,000 Satoshi support zone. At that point, we're going to be looking for a double bottom. That's exactly what happened. Price ended up breaking down or reaching down, getting to that point to where it may create a double bottom and hopefully create a nice little bounce. We haven't had that yet. Last time, though, if we zoom in here, we can see that it took 3 bounces before we ended up actually taking off from this point. So let's see if this support can hold. If we come out here, look at this from a bigger picture, pull out on the daily. A couple different things, guys. First of all, we can see that zone is sitting perfectly. If I go swing low, swing high from this structure here, we can see that where price is hitting now, it's hitting perfectly on the 8865 fib level, guys. That is the last really relevant fib level before the whole structure ends up breaking down. As of now, from an Elliott perspective, we can still count this as a primary wave 1. We actually have 5 waves up, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, shortened 5th wave here, but still 5 waves nonetheless, guys. So anytime you have 5 waves up, we've got what an ABC correction. We can see we have a perfect A, B, and it's coming down for a very, very deep C, sitting at the 8865. As I said, guys, if it goes below the 8865, the chances of this remaining a valid count are very, very, very small, and I wouldn't count on it. But also from the larger picture, guys, we can see, as I pointed out last time, we're operating within this larger wedge. And as price gets closer to the apex of this wedge, guys, we can expect a larger, much more impulsive-looking breakout, guys. And if that does end up happening, just from a pure Elliott perspective, if we count this prior low. We've created a series of higher lows. So price did end up coming down, but it bounced off higher than this prior low here. We're hoping that ends up happening here as well, so we can continue to make that series of higher lows. If that does happen, we can still count this entire thing as a 1, 2 going in for the 3. And that would be a very, very impulsive looking 3, much like we had something like this here. Very impulsive looking 3, and should time nicely with Bitcoin. And the bull run that I expect Bitcoin to have probably in late September sometime. So we'll see if it does end up impulsing out that way. We also have this massive descending resistance line that's been in place since mid-May. We can see price came up as it wicked into it just a few times, but unable to break past. If price were sitting right up, snuggled up against it right now, guys, price did break down a little bit, but not too much, not impulsively, not yet. So if price can end up breaking above this descending resistance line, that's going to be a very, very bullish sign. I'm not saying that's going to happen, guys, but if it can, that would break this bearish trend. That would just be one more bullish sign that we could point to show some kind of strengthening in this very bearish market that we've been in so far. To the upside, guys, we can see that this resistance line here is sitting at about 16.5 thousand Satoshi. Is a very relevant resistance line. It acted as support here, support, came up, resistance, broke through briefly, but then resistance, and then just breaking down, guys. So if we can get north of this descending, if we can get north of not only the descending resistance, but also this resistance line here at 16.5K Satoshi, it's going to be a very bullish sign. I do think if we can get north of that 16.5, it'll be a very quick rise to 17.5, at least 17.5K Satoshi. If we can get north there, and that's a big if, guys. We'll have to wait and see how that ends up playing out. We're certainly not there yet at all. Let's come right here and check out our moving averages. Again, on the daily chart, guys, zooming in here, we can see prices just hitting the lower Bollinger Bands. We can also see these lower Bollinger Bands are starting to bottleneck. Anytime that happens, guys, indicative of possible larger breakout to come. We aren't seeing the EMAs or moving averages start to converge nearly as much as we'd like to. That would indicate So we're not seeing that indication of a larger breakout anytime soon, guys. But the Bollinger Bands are starting to bottleneck, and that is one indication. We can see price has been rejected off this 8-day EMA, represented by this blue line many times, guys. Very bullish, or excuse me, very bearish sign that we can't even break above that, only by a wick, showing just continued market weakness all throughout, as if you didn't already know that. Coming in here, looking at the 4-hour chart. Coming here, looking at the 4-hour chart, guys, we can see prices just collapsing. Again, broke through the 8-day EMA, has now started to expand the lower Bollinger Bands, guys, and almost just stretching them like a rubber band. And this doesn't suggest that we might see a temporary rise in price, but it doesn't mean that we have to. Certainly not at all. And if Bitcoin just tanks, of course, Steem is going to continue to tank right along with it, guys. But assuming Bitcoin doesn't move, Steem does its own thing, I would expect it to bounce. If Bitcoin, I would expect at least a small bounce, at least up into this small little order block up in here at 15.5 K Satoshi. So anyway, guys, these are my quick thoughts on Steem. Not looking great at the moment. If you're thinking about buying possible trades, I don't see any great trade setups at the moment. If you wanted to dollar cost average in right here, possibly put a small buy order right in at 15,000 Satoshi, that would not be a terrible idea, expecting a double bottom bounce. If you wanted to hold it, I'd have my stop. If you did do that, though, I'd have my stops very tight, possibly sitting at about 14.7 K Satoshi as my stop, just knowing that if it does break down, it'll be a very quick drop down to 14,000 Satoshi if it does break below that 15K decisively. To the upside, guys, if you did play that 15,000, I would definitely think about taking profits as soon as it gets near this descending resistance line. If you took profits off the table, or if you took your investment off the table, let your profits ride possibly up to this 16.5K Satoshi resistance line. That's where I would absolutely get out, expecting a bounce there at that 16.5. If it does break above that, great, but I wouldn't want to take the risk if I was to buy down here. I'd be very happy with just buying the 15,000, coming up to this descending resistance, taking my profits off the table, or excuse me, take my investment off the table, letting the profits ride up to 16.5. That'd just be my opinion. And I would also make sure I would continue, as price rose, continue to adjust your stop loss right behind the price as it continued to rise. No one could reverse at any point in time. So anyway, guys, and we're just not seeing any volume, so I just don't see anything that would indicate a long-term, even if we get a small little bounce, I see nothing that would indicate a long-term impulsive move to the upside, at least not yet. Doesn't mean it can't happen, guys, and if Bitcoin turns around, certainly it will. But as of right now, guys, the volume is just terrible, so I'm not seeing anything. Overall, it just looks incredibly weak. So anyway, guys, these are my thoughts on Steem. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, please let me know in the comment section below. As always, guys, if you do appreciate these videos, I certainly would appreciate an upvote or a re-steem or a like, depending on where you're viewing this. Until next time, guys, please trade safe. This is Working, signing out.